Let's welcome to the show tonight's very special guest. Super excited to have him on, Sean Oliver. Sean, how are you, sir?
I'm present. I'm here and I'm ready to talk wrestling. I think both then and now, from
I see what you did
from what
there.
I
I like that.
understand.
I like that. I like that. It's great to have you on, sir. I love what you do online. I really do. I've been watching your stuff forever, forever, and I just a lot of respect for what you do. You're good at.
You,
You're very good at your job.
you make me feel so young.
When I was a kid, I remember.
Yeah.
So speaking of being a kid, were you always a wrestling fan? Is that how you got involved?
Um, yes, when I was, I'll say about six, maybe. I was over a friend's house and he had older brothers and they had a
Always,
giant black
it's
and
always,
white television set.
it's always the older brother.
It's always the older brothers, right? 6-year-olds got no business knowing who Baron Mikhail Cicluna is. But so on the giant black and white television, there was this fighting that I knew grown-ups shouldn't be doing like they were doing.
Right.
And but then what got me was a promo in front of the ring after the match with superstar Billy Graham.
Wow.
And I said, okay, this is very different. You got to remember back then, for anyone who's not our age, I'm putting you in my category whether you belong or
No,
not.
I'm good.
You're
I'm good with
there.
that.
Okay.
Yeah.
The superheroes of that time, Superman, Spider-Man, they were cartoony. They were silly. The Batman show was ridiculous. The Adam West Batman show on television in the tights was ridiculous.
Right.
Um, it's now today, Black Panther and Iron Man, they're ass kicking um, real heroes. That's what wrestling was to us. Those were our superheroes.
Well said.
So I was enraptured by the product. I grew up in the Northeast, so I watched the Vince McMahon senior first product, then junior, until cable, and then we could get everything. And I did. And I think most wrestling fans are the same as me in that they're introduced to it by their local company, unless today, it's all global and everything. But
Sure.
back then, you were introduced to it by your local product, and then you sought out. You were like, "Oh, so this goes on in Florida? Oh, so there's something from Texas that's going to be on
Right.
MSG Network tonight, the world class." And the magazines, of course, connected you to all of them. And I devoured every available broadcast, had every magazine every month. Well, I knew when PWI was coming out, when The Wrestler and Inside Wrestling would come out. It
Yeah.
was always the same day. Um, and yeah, and that was it. And it became an obsession, those real world superheroes. And then when you got to go to the arenas and stand in front of Tony Atlas or King Kong Bundy, and like, holy shit, this isn't Adam West wearing a suit. These guys are real humans in this
Right.
condition. It was
Right.
spellbinding. And once it hooks you as a kid, um, you're in.
I'm from Jersey. Where are you from?
Jersey.
Where?
I grew up in West New York, New Jersey, which is in Hudson County, right next to Union City, Hoboken, if you
Okay.
right across from Manhattan. You could throw a rock and hit the water. You couldn't go across, but you could hit the Hudson River. So yeah, so I got the New York product until cable came.
Are you still in New Jersey?
I am. I
Oh,
am.
all right.
I am just a little
I like it.
south of where I grew up. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Freehold.
Oh, the freehold. You see, anything south of Edison, I consider the South.
Yeah.
So, so you're in the South. So okay, so freehold. Um, as I understand it, there's two sections of freehold, right?
Township and borough. Yes.
Yeah, the other side of the tracks of freehold.
I was a good boy. I came from the good side.
Okay.
Nothing happened where I went to school.
When did you decide to work?
1992. I started. I went to Iron Mike Sharp's wrestling school in Bricktown, New Jersey, and just a
Mike,
TV.
now was that? Oh, I'm thinking of Pretty Boy Larry Sharp. Never mind.
Yeah.
Okay. So Iron Mike Sharp. I didn't. Did Iron Mike Sharp had a wrestling school in New Jersey?
Yeah. And you know what's funny? When I went up to the agents at a house show and I said I'm from Mike Sharp's wrestling school, They said the same exact thing. Mike Sharp is a wrestling school, so that's how I started getting booked as an enhancement guy. Mike Sharp never told the office that he had a school, so I think he had a little heat
Wow.
with me about
You should
that.
have just told everyone you went to Sharp's wrestling school. They would have thought it was the Monster Factory
Love it.
outside of Philly, and you would have had instant creds. How was Mike Sharp as a teacher? This is fascinating.
Mike Sharp, as a person, awesome guy. As a worker, a machine. As a teacher, Sean, I've never walked up with the man. Not once. He never got in the ring. Not one time.
Who were his instructors then?
It was like, it was so, oh man, it was so unstructured. It was like, all right, if you've been here a year, then you're going to train the guys who've been here 6 months. If you've been here 6 months, you train the brand new guys, and so on and so on. It wasn't really like it wasn't a good school. I mean, I'm glad I went. Mike was a very nice, honest guy, but as far as a school, it was just a ring and four walls.
What did Mike do all day? Did you just like walk around in iron shirts all day? You know, he was
Yeah,
an obsessive compulsive
yeah.
Mike.
I mean, he would show. We all had keys, so we'd open up and train, and Mike would show up and sit at his desk, and
Go to the bank is what Mike would do.
yeah, exactly, exactly. His name was on the billboard, and he'd show up, and yeah, that's about it.
Wow.
Yeah,
See, I learned something from this interview.
yes,
This is worthwhile. If for nothing, if no one gleans anything from the conversation, everyone just learned that Mike Sharp had a wrestling school in Bricktown,
yes, sir.
Bricktucky, as I call it.
Who were your guys growing up?
Um, Piper.
Mhm.
Um, just because of his mouth. Um, you couldn't help but be swept up into Hulkamania.
True.
Um, I never really cared whether he won or lost, but shit, man, when the music hit, this is the days before the entrance ramp, before the Titantron and the lights. It was the Meadowlands Arena or the Garden. The music hit, and you didn't need lights or a Titantron. That whole goddamn building changed when first I the Tiger and then Real American when they recorded the wrestling album. When that music hit, the place changed. So you couldn't help but be swept up in that. And he was a larger than life figure. He transcended the sport. So, I mean, I don't know anyone that grew up in that era that didn't say Hogan was something very special to them.
And there wasn't a revolving door of top guys. There was Hulk Hogan, and then there was everybody else.
Yeah.
He was the guy. I remember going to the Meadowlands as a kid. Hulk Hogan versus Killer Khan. The pop was the greatest pop I've ever heard in my life. It was
Did
unbelievable.
he spit the green mist?
He ducked the mist, and Dick Worley took it in the face.
Oh, poor Dick. I used to stand outside by the ramp in the back to get autographs before the show. Even when I didn't go to the card, if I didn't have tickets, we try to get like a parent or an older sibling to drive us out there for 2 hours while we stood in the freezing cold to try and convince Bob Orton to sign our index card with a frozen pen. Um, and I have fond memories of that. It was seeing them slightly outside of character. Um, they weren't breaking kayfabe entirely, but they were a little softer. I had
Right.
Piper, but my highlight was they were pulling up to the gate and they had to wait for the security guard to come over, write the license plate down, take the names, and then let them down. So the car's idling and the windows down. I forget who was driving, but Piper was in the passenger seat. And he was wrestling. I think he was in a tag match against Bruno and like maybe David San Martino. And I'm calling into the car. I said, Roddy, I want Bruno out on a stretcher tonight. I said, be careful, or all the grease. You probably won't be able to stay on him for the 3 count. He laughed. He goes, "You're gonna take my job someday." And they drove down. That was that
Wow.
was that was that was the only shit I need. I could have died right after that. I would have been
That's
fine.
amazing.
Yeah.
And two, when you saw him then, it's not like now you go on, I don't know, any top guys, YouTube or Instagram or Twitter, you see them with their families dressed in regular clothes. Like seeing them dressed as regular people at the hotel, you just weren't used to that. You know what I mean? It was just different seeing them in
Correct.
person.
And that's what made it special.
Yeah.
They weren't. they weren't on the Tonight Show talking about their character. It's very different now. It's just another form of entertainment. It's no different than movies or TV shows that it's been exposed and they treat it that way. But back then, you're right. It was like, seeing Pedro Morales in jeans walking in. It was there was something special about that.
How'd you get into the interviewing of pro wrestler business?
Oh, I don't know. I
Well, I
still
just can't. I can't imagine like, okay, not now because now you're known and people know you, but like day one, like calling up Big Bully Busick to interview him. Like, what was? You must have got a lot of people hanging up on you.
the way it started was my friend Anthony and I, who I'd known since I was in college. I was working in New York. I was at 60 Wall Street on the 48th floor, looking out on a snowy night. And we were bullshitting on the phone about we were we were we were like movie buffs, and I'd studied film in college, and that's what I was doing. I was acting, but I was also working in film. And so he said, the only thing that hasn't been done yet, uh, Mike, you remember laser discs when you could listen to an alternate track of like the director
Yeah,
talking through the movie
sure.
and telling you how they set up all the scenes?
Hmm.
So Anthony says to me, the only thing that hasn't been done is imagine a wrestling disc, but with the wrestlers telling you like everything that was happening in the ring, and oh, I dropped my gig here, and I was like, yeah, that's cool. I said, could we do that? He said, well, we couldn't sell the matches because someone owns the footage,
Right,
but we could. Now, this is 2007, so iTunes is very new in that whole technology. He said we could have them download MP3s, like they make a purchase and download an MP3, and then put on their iPod and listen to it while they watch the match. We would just have to sit down with the wrestler in person, and so that it stays in real time,
right.
watch the match with the wrestler and get them to talk about it. I said, well, that's cool as hell. I should just find out if that's a technology we could do right now and sell, and I'll set it all up. So in days, I we decided we could do it. We formed Kayfabe Commentaries, thus the commentaries, because we originally sold commentary tracks,
Got it.
just audio. And you get the instruction where to start your play button after the introductions so that you were in sync. And it was like you sitting on the couch with the
Interesting.
Iron Sheik who talked
Yeah.
you through 10 matches.
Right.
So I was like, fuck. Now, wrestling is an insular community. So
Right.
for us to try to get in, I hadn't considered really that would be a challenge. So I found a guy named John Mills who was advertising on, I think, like Georgianne Macropolis's website or something, that he was booking talent available. And I saw that he had Greg Valentine and the Honky Tonk Man were going to be in Jersey in like a month. So I called him and I gave him the pitch of what we were trying to do, which he didn't understand. And I'm like, who would? My
Right.
pitch was,
Sure.
yeah, we're doing downloadable alternate commentary tracks for wrestling matches. What? Could I have started with a more difficult product to
Right.
get off the ground?
Right.
But we booked them. I got on the phone and I gave them the pitch. They probably didn't get it. I said, think of it as a shoot interview about specific matches. That they seem to understand. And okay, so now they're going to be in Jersey, but someone's bringing them out, right? They're working for Eric Sims, it was, uh, on a local card and then doing signings. And, Eric loads people up with a bunch of shit.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't want to cut anyone else into the deal. I was an outsider, but I was smart enough or street savvy enough or whatever. Working for a bookie in high school, you learn things, I guess, to tell the guys, let me know the hotel you're staying at. When you're doing the show that night, we're going to set up in a room down the hall. And when Eric drops you off at midnight, just come down the hall, I'll tell you the room. And we're going to do this stuff. So we did it. So we set up, we were down the hall, and uh, Eric gets, I think Eric got wind of free food.
Mm,
And so I was going to feed the boys, obviously, Greg and Honky. And so he comes for the shoot, and he can, he could stay. I'd heard about him, I'd seen him, I think, on some shoots probably. And we put on headsets. Each guy, we took turns with matches, and then we did rhythm and blues matches, so they were together for a few.
right,
And I sat, and we both watched a monitor, and I asked questions. It was I call those products like the garage days of what became kayfabe commentaries, because although it was only audio, we were we were doing what we would do later with shows like Guest Booker and You Shoot and Timeline, in a in a far less sophisticated way. So that was the
right,
start, Mike. We just kind of kicked the door open. We didn't ask for permission, but here's the difference, and here's why we were able to stay active. We paid what we promised. I came from the entertainment side. So there was food for talent. I talked to them
right,
before. I said, "What can I get you? Can we get you like your beverage of choice, your food?" I wanted them comfortable.
right,
And I took care of them and we respected them. We weren't markish. I mean, we were marks, but we didn't treat it markish. They
right.
came, there was real equipment. And they had a good time. So word started to spread that these guys are okay. So our second recording of those tracks, we get Harley Race. You don't get
Wow.
that unless
No.
someone says, "Oh, these guys are okay. They're
Yeah,
new." So Harley and we did Orndorff. So we did a bunch of these audio things. And within a year, it became apparent from a financial model that it was not going to be sustainable selling audio tracks for $1.99 each. We had to go
right.
to, you know, we had to get in on that video shoot interview market, $20 a DVD, just to sustain what we were paying these guys. And so that's what happened. So I came up with the concept of guest booker, where we'll bring in a booker. I was always fascinated with the business side of wrestling,
Yeah,
more
me
so
too.
than what was on camera. So what if we sat down with a booker and asked them to book something on camera that they weren't responsible for, like getting the writers of Friends to write an episode of Star Trek and
Right.
film
Love
it.
it. Yeah.
And that's how it started, Mike.
Yeah. Well, also back in the day, so you had to get a hotel room, you had to get the food, you had to fly the guys in sometimes, right? I mean, you have to give a payday. It's not like it is now. You just throw something on YouTube. It was quite an investment.
Yeah, and I have to say it diminished the product to do things like this for two reasons. First of all, why did Kayfabe Commentaries stop producing videos? Well, we get a hotel. Once we were doing video, now the pay scale changes too, because it's not just me sitting in a hotel room for an hour with these guys going over matches.
Camera crew,
Yeah, uh,
editing. Yeah.
food,
Yeah.
food for a crew, food for talent.
Right.
We would try to block book it where we could shoot two or three in a day with talent, so that we'd only really have one setup fee. The hotel suite, our production was larger than a hotel room could handle. I didn't want what was existing in the shoot interview world, which was a head on a platter and some disjointed voice asking
Right.
questions.
Right.
I'm from
Yeah.
the entertainment business, so it had to look a certain way, had to sound a certain way, had to be very professional. So we needed a lot of space. So we'd have to get hotel suites or like breakout rooms, like conference rooms, where
Right.
we could just throw all the furniture to the side and build a set. And each one of our series had unique sets with unique colors. And we saw that we could have series based programming within the shoot interview world. We could have fans ask questions entirely on one show, You Shoot. We could go chronologically through 1 year at a time with people, timeline. We could have a booker. So we needed them to look different, sound different, feel different, and be different shows. So yes, it wasn't a cheap proposition. On a busy weekend of shooting, if we set up at a convention, like Legends of the Ring, we used a lot with James and Terrence. I mean, I could easily spend $15,000. The company could spend 15 grand shooting 3 and 4 shows. So when this happened, and guys were doing, first, when guys were doing podcasts, And I paid Homeboy however much money to come and tell me the stories that we had to edit and put graphs because it
Right.
took 4 months to come out. And the
Right.
day after that, he was on a podcast, told the same stories for nothing.
Right.
How's that going to sustain? And then
Right.
people started talking on Zoom with it, and so it was over. And in
Yeah.
person, Mike, if you were sitting with me, there'd be a different energy right now.
Right.
I mean, this is fine, but something happens when you're in someone's presence and you feel their energy. And our early success, I mean, part of it I think was attributable to the production aspect of it and it being kind of a smart product. But I think if I have a superpower at all, Mike, it's that I can sit down with someone for the first time, someone who's in a business where you don't trust anybody, and within a few minutes, I could engender their trust,
Right.
get them to talk to me. I don't know why. I would try to go to dinner with someone before because that helped. If I'd never worked with them before, if I'd worked with them before, then they were comfortable. But sit and get to know them, buy them a meal. They would sit with the crew. The whole crew would come, and we'd feel like friends in a way by the time. But sometimes you don't have that. You know, if they're booked pretty solid with it by a promoter,
Right.
they'd come in and just sit in the chair, and it would start like this. But after a few minutes, it was like this. Yeah.
Yeah. I like that. Any no shows? Any issues? Guys not showing up?
I'm really lucky. Our company was um, almost 100% positive reviews. I've written in my books about a couple that weren't, and I got a call this year from one of them, Buff. The opening chapter of Kayfabe is the hellacious night we tried to get Buff to do anything intelligible on camera as he drooled into the microphone.
Right.
Um, it was terrible. And then I wanted to make good on the booking. I gave him some money. I said, Buff, I can't release this because of your condition. But you were coming here to make here's a few $100. Just consider this a deposit and let's do it again next time you're here. Okay. He was so appreciative and wonderful, and I think truly felt bad that his condition had slipped that night. And when I called him back to book him, he told me to go fuck myself. He's doing a documentary about his family and his price is higher now. So I learned what all promoters learn about you motherfuckers eventually. Um, and and I wrote about it in the book. And I don't like to tell tales out of school, but I wanted people to know in the opening chapter of the book Kayfabe what it was like dealing with people in this business. And Buff called me last year and apologized.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, he's been on the show a couple times. He's a good dude now. I mean, he
Yeah.
seems like he's very grateful to be alive and healthy.
I'll tell you, we had a laugh about it. It took whatever 15, 10 years since it happened, but
Right.
we were able to laugh about it. So that was one of the famous ones. Um, we had Colt Cabana booked for a U shoot, and U shoots are tricky because if schedules fall to the wayside and someone can't do a show, we can just shelve the script and get them another time. But U shoot, we announce it so that we can get solicitations
Mm,
from the fans
right.
for questions. So we announced it, and I guess he'd watched some of them and kind of got cold feet and called me and said, I can't do a show like this, man. I have a lot of friends in the business and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, fuck. So I kind of, I guess, skewered him a little in one of the books, and he came up to me at a convention too and offered his hand. I said, well, you're a fucking man. I said, it's all I could tell you is you're a man for coming up and shaking my hand, and I appreciate it. So those two, I mean, Cults wasn't bad. He just called me and said he didn't want to do the show after he took the booking, but we had to renege on something we promised the fans, so it put us in a shitty spot. And then the other one, what was another one? Well, Sid didn't make one of them. Didn't make it there, but I had expected that. I think.
You had a backup plan. You had like James Storm on standby or something, right?
Yeah. He lost his wallet at the airport. Go figure.
You have the
So
crew there. You have everybody there.
fortunately,
Oh,
it was a few hours before. But I mean, I
right.
had to tell people they didn't have a payday. The
Right.
company, they didn't have a payday that day. That wasn't
Sucks.
fun
Right.
because he was the only shoot that night. I didn't have a few things lined up, so I told the guys, you're off. Sorry. So and you know what the thing that sucks is, I would have really liked to have interviewed him. I had
Mm.
a very good interview written for I think the show he was doing was Breaking Kayfabe, where we talked to them about their lives, like outside the ring. And then another very famous one with Conan, who twice didn't get. One time he had to cancel, and he said, "I'll come next year or whatever." And then we sent the deposit, and he didn't get on a plane. And today he talks about it and says it was an illness. It wasn't an illness. He just didn't get on a plane, which, everyone's over it, I guess. Fans still like to jazz him up about it, and he fires all up about it because I called him out on it. I said, motherfucker, it was a purse snatch. You fucking
Right.
snatched my purse. You think I'm gonna let you stand there? So
You ever
that was
notice?
that. So those are the only few knuckleheads that acted like wrestlers, and had me understanding everything Eric Bischoff or Vince McMahon Sr. or anyone had to deal with.
You ever notice, like, when I talk to people who are still in the business compared to people who know there's no chance they're ever going back, they kind of talk differently in interviews. Do you ever experience that? Like,
100%.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
The guys with nothing to lose
Yes.
are the ones you want.
Screw so and so. Yeah.
But you know what the truth was? Our shows weren't the car crash. Well, you shoot's a little different because we turn it over to the fans. And we got such responses. We couldn't put every question in. But, you know, if you have a certain guest that fans are expecting will be asked about something, they better be asked about it.
Right.
We did a You Shoot Live with Dixie Carter, and I played every shitty question, the legitimate questions too, but also, the videos people sent of them being woken up by a friend and going, "Oh, sorry, I dozed off. I was watching a TNA pay-per-view." And I'm sitting next to her, and there was one question that I omitted from the script. It involved her grooming. You can
Got
take
it.
it from there, but I thought that didn't have to be asked.
Right. Interesting.
No, I
Ever-
wish I would have. At this point, I wish I would have known.
yeah.
Yeah.
You know what? Part two. Get her back on.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know if she's busy, but we'll see.
Anyone give you crap about the dick bag, the hoe bag? Anyone ever come up to you and say no?
No, we were equal opportunity offenders. If they shot on the boys, they shot on the girls, and that was it.
But no one who was called a dick or called a hoe ever came up to you and gave you shit about anything. Don't
I
shit on
didn't
your show.
call him that.
Got it.
Balls Mahoney did. You want his number?
Balls Mahoney.
That was the reply.
Rest in peace,
Did you
Balls
ever
Mahoney.
see the shoot we did with Balls?
Oh yeah.
We did a you shoot with him where we had so his friend Damien Darling,
Hmm.
uh got um Chris Candido's leather kiss jacket that he wore all the time from Johnny, from his brother. And we did a terrible rib on Balls. We brought out a Ouija board, and we said that we were going to try to contact, because but Balls believed in all that shit,
Yeah.
ghosts and shit. And so we bring out a Ouija board, and while I'm working the little thing with him, Damien's sitting on the side. He slides out Chris's jacket, and from behind Balls, he slides it under his chair. And I spell out, "Look down." And I don't know what was looked at. So he goes and he finds the jacket. And in the this part was an accident. In the pocket of the jacket was a flyer from the 90s of a wrestling seminar with Ricky Steamboat that they went to as kids.
Oh wow. Wow.
Just happened to be in the coat. And so Balls, he's looking at it. He's like, this is Chris's jacket. He's like, all right, we got to stop. He gets up to leave. I said, take the mic off. Don't break the mic. And he went outside for a cigarette or whatever. And I can't remember if we ever told him it was a work. before he died.
I drove from New Jersey to Kentucky with Balls Mahoney.
Oh, God help your ears.
Yeah. He's barking at oncoming traffic, and yeah, it was
Wow.
yeah, it was good times.
There, you should be in the Hall of Fame just for that.
It was me, him, and a young D'Lo Brown going to Smoky Mountain Wrestling.
I never met D'Lo. I would have liked to have met D'Lo.
I was his tryout match for Smoky Mountain.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, good guy, very good guy. Any mark out moments? And when I say it respectively, like I got to wrestle Shawn Michaels, I marked out. I got to
Mm.
wrestle, you know, Tito Santana, I marked out. Inside, like anyone like really like, oh my gosh, I'm talking to so and so.
I gotta say that when you're there, I'm worried about the timing of everyone's schedule. I'm worried about, did the food get here? Is the lighting okay? Where are we on time? Holy shit, we've been talking for an hour and I'm only on page 7 of a 40-page script.
Right,
I'm worried about, I'm not worried. I'm concentrating on a lot of things. So usually not. Um, Now we did get to do a timeline with Piper, and I told you my affinity for him as a kid. And I got to, there are a few times, Mike, where I could sit with someone and completely forget I'm shooting a show. I'm talking to them like a fan almost,
right,
and everything else disappears. So I think Roddy's show was probably like that. Um, I'm not thinking about all the clinical stuff that's involved with a shoot, um, which 99% of the time I am. So unfortunately, when you start to work in a business you're a fan of, the fanboy thing just kind of goes away because you're working,
right.
you know. So I don't know if I had one. I can't really say I had. You know what? I'll take that back. Anytime one of the boys came to me, even outside of a shoot, and complimented the work and said they watched that timeline 5 times, that felt great. That was when I was like, fuck, okay.
Nice.
Um, the first time I heard, who told me? I can't remember who told me, but someone told me that one time in a WWE locker room, right after we came out, so we still kind of unknown. All the boys were huddled around a monitor or a computer or something. And when someone went over to look what was on, it was guest booker. So when I heard that, I was like, fuck, that's cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, we're all fans.
Yeah.
Absolutely. One of my favorites you did was one of my favorite interviews, King Kong Bundy. Before he passed away, he was
Right
I,
before,
I
yeah.
was I was a trainer at his wrestling school. Yeah, like he and I were. There was a time in my life I saw him 3, 4 times a week. Like just
Was he
just
not like the nicest guy? He could be a little bit of a ball buster, but he had such a nice heart.
every time we went out, no matter who went up to him, he stopped what he was doing and he took the time to talk to them like a person. Great guy. His personality really I could tell he was comfortable with you. His personality really came through. I remember one time you're like, I find that interesting. And he's like, you haven't found everything I say interesting?
Yeah.
Sean, what the hell? Yeah, like, there's so many good classic King Kong Bundy lines and that I absolutely loved it.
He reached over, he did the gimmick where he looks at my tie, he goes, they make any of that stuff for men?
Yeah,
You know, his
yeah.
stock replies. I'll give you an exclusive though. If you haven't read my book, then you don't know this about, because we had to edit it out of the King Kong Bundy show. And it was very much inadvertent, and I felt awful. But I'll tell it now because everyone's dead that's in the story. So we did a timeline with George Steele where he was talking about his agenting days. And so he mentions it was actually made it to the trailer. There was a trailer moment in the George Steele where he's telling a story about Bundy shortly after WrestleMania 2, where he main evented against Hogan. And George says, I thought. Yeah, so Bundy's walking around saying, oh, I'm a top guy around here. I'm a top guy around here. You're not a top guy around here. You had one run. Okay.
I remember this.
Okay.
Yeah.
I bring it up to King. He goes off on Steel. Buries him ungodly, down to the colostomy bag. I mean, nothing was off the table.
Right.
Skewered him. And during so we were taking a break in the shooting. A couple minutes later, I'm going over the script. He goes, Sean, did he really say that about me? I said, yeah. I said to one of the guys on the crew, I said, Adam, go outside, find the clip and play it for Chris. He comes back in and his face is like this. I said, did you get it? He goes, yes, but you should
But
listen carefully. It's barely audible. But George Steele says, Chief said, you're not a top guy around here. It was Strongbow who was talking about.
oh wow.
Chris, he goes, you motherfucker, you tricked me to talk
That's
about him
great.
so you could release that.
Oh,
I said, Chris, on my kids, I'll cut it. It was an honest mistake. And I did, of course.
right.
But it's one of the things, well, we keep everything. So that's one of the things I'd love to watch back someday.
Oh, and he could hold a grudge.
Oh,
He could
he
hold a
believed
grudge,
me
that
for
man.
whatever reason. Again, it was the trust. He believed
Right.
me. I cut it. But God, he was fucking hot.
That's classic. That's
If he
classic.
got me, it would have been I could have probably outrun him. But if he got me, there would have been a problem because he was always big right to the end.
Any favorite guests? Any favorite moments?
I'm gonna give you such a shitty promoter answer here, but the discs that made the most money were my favorite.
Okay.
But they happened to be great guests. So
Yeah.
Nash, Sullivan,
Mhm.
people that fans would pay to hear talk. Russo. Russo's discs did great. And then Cornette, nobody compared to Cornette. And I'll take that thank you anytime you want, Jim, because after your appearances on our shows came your podcast and everything else. So you're welcome for the resurgence.
Jamie Dundee. He sold pretty good.
Jamie Dundee was an interesting show, but you know what? I'll listen. A wilding, coked out guy next to me wants to keep kissing me throughout the show. If it makes for an entertaining disc, that's fine. It's not about me once the camera rolls. It's about the viewer,
Right.
the fan that purchases this. So as long as the interview's fine, I will. It's my job to put up with the cranky bullshit, the ridiculous requests, the time schedule bullshit, trying to hold me up for more money, which never works. All that shit I'll deal with as long as you give the fans a great product. Then I was happy. There was no difference to me in my mind between a very cordial guest like Cornette and somebody off the wall, which made for a difficult afternoon like Jamie Dundee. As long as the two discs were good in the eyes of the fans as a product, I was fine.
I enjoyed the Hornswoggle one. Like that was
Oh,
just a, that's just like
Dylan's great. Dylan's fun to hang with.
there's certain ones where you're like, I'll give it a shot. And you're like, these are good stories. Like you never know. Like you never know who's gonna tell you what. Everyone's got a story. Everyone's
Yeah.
got a story.
I think we did two. I think we did a U shoot with him and a timeline. Yeah, we did. We did two.
How'd you start working with Kevin?
Booked him for a timeline. I feel like his first show was timeline. There are a few guys in the business, rare, but they could do each of our shows. Each of our
Right.
shows required a different guest.
Sure.
Timeline WCW, you had to work on top in WCW for at least a year to talk about that year. Timeline WWE, same thing, different company. You shoot, you got to be a bit of a lightning rod. People, you got to get on and be willing to talk a little shit if fans ask you crazy questions. Guest booker, you had to have been in creative for. So someone like Corny
Right.
would do every show.
Checks all the boxes.
Kevin, every show.
Yeah.
Sullivan, every show. So he came out to do I guess the timeline WWE was the first one about his 1995 title run, and liked working with us. Um, got us, we got him, and then anytime he was out by us, you know how I knew Kevin liked us? The only time we had to talk about money, and this is Nash we're talking about, was the first show. I just booked him after that. He showed up. I handed him an envelope. He never opened it. We'd go to dinner. We'd go to like Bonefish Grill. I'd tell him, get a bottle of wine. I knew he liked wine. I said, get a bottle, bro. Get, keep it under 500, but get a bottle. Um, and I think he just liked hanging with us, and I always made it comfortable for him. I was able to lead the interview in a way, and you can phrase questions in a way that you're setting it up for someone to knock it down.
Sure.
I could always pitch it over the plate for him, and that. And then kind of randomly, he began texting me about a podcast starting 7 years ago was when we
Wow.
first started talking about this show. Yeah.
Wow. Is this your full-time gig?
No, I do a lot of stuff. I'm a very fractured individual. What I tell my kids all the time is you don't have to be one thing. I hate meeting new people like at a wedding or something because they go, so what do you do? I go, well, what do you want to talk about? You want to talk about movies? Talk about that. You want to talk about, I've written books. You want to talk about that? So yeah, so I touch a lot of things. You have to today. With
Right.
the tariffs, we're gonna have to make an insane amount of money just to buy cars.
You want to plug your stuff? You want to plug any of your books or
Yeah,
any
Todd is
stuff?
Todd. That was a fun one. That's Todd Gordon's the story of Todd building ECW, very much from scratch, or from the scraps of
TWA,
yeah,
Chocolate Heart.
TWA. And I have what do I have coming? I have some I write outside of the wrestling industry too. But I'm doing ICP's book with them about JCW and their foray into wrestling. It's actually going to be a gorgeous coffee table book, full color glossy book about their foray into pro wrestling. It's called Unaccepted Volume 1. So that one's about how they were paid no mind by the mainstream professional wrestling world. And then a few years, I think we're going to do volume 2, which is how they were paid no mind by the music world, and still made that work. So yeah, so a couple of those. And then if you're into the world of espionage, I have a great true nonfiction book called Monkey Morales, which will be out September 9th this year about a real life Cuban spy turned CIA operative, turned FBI informant, turned one of those Cuban Scarface guys in Miami in the 70s. Yeah, so I'm busy, Mike.
Nice.
So if we're talking Instagram, it's Sean Oliver Official. And I'm not on X very much anymore, but that's Kayfabe Sean.